Hello and welcome to this week's video. I do race recaps of my rookie experience, sharing my thought process and my overall experience as I am driving through the rookie season. This is my second season. I have had a good start here, my second time racing on this particular racetrack at Virginia International Raceway. Had a good start, however, I am cautious going into turn one with the cold brakes, so I do brake a little bit too much. The cars behind me do keep a safe distance. The green car behind me, or bluish car, whatever that color is trying to come closer and make a move, but we are going through here cautiously and staying on track. Staying on track is the main objective here, and not trying to get crashed into or have other cars crash into me. As the tires warm up, we get more aggressive with taking these turns, and that is how it's supposed to be. The first turns, of course, here, very cautious, a little bit off the line where we should be, and struggling to stay on track as we go through here. But now we're setting up that little back straight in the corner of the track here, and we are pushing it forward. As I mentioned to one of my viewers in a previous video's comments, this is my second season around this track, and I was surprised at how much faster I was now compared to a couple of weeks ago. I actually legitimately qualified first, being about a second faster than the number 2 car. So this was surprising to me. This is my first qualifying P1 ever, and it's my race to lose, which, as we can see soon, is going to unfold, and I have to claw my way back forward. I have a bit of a bad exit out of these corners, and that allows the other car to go side by side. I'm not willing to battle with it yet because I'm not sure how my tires are going to react at this point of the race, so I let them go by with the hope that I'll be able to make my way past them in the future, as I was about a second faster than a car in qualifying. And overall, I was about 2.5 seconds faster consistently during practice, doing test drives on this track than I was in the last season. The car on the right is defending on the right here, taking the inside line away from us, and we have to stay on the outside, making our way through it, braking correctly as far as I can tell here for my standards, making our way around. The red car behind us is trying to poke its nose in, and they do pit maneuver me. At this point, I was thinking, oh no, I've lost the race. I'm back in the last position. But it turns out I was only P6, so the race continues, and the race is still on. In almost every second race or every third race that I am participating, somebody is inevitably commenting on someone else's driving with the typical learn how to drive comment. I mean, of course, we are all in rookie season here for a reason. That is where we do learn how to drive, and I'm guessing that continues on in the higher levels as well. We are all learning to drive here. So I just got my head down and kept going forward. I knew I could overtake these cars eventually. There are still lots of laps to go. No need to comment on anything. Just keep your head down is my thought here, and I push on as I try to make up the positions that I've just lost. Fortunately, there was no damage to the car in this race as I continue to go through here. These particular series of going off the throttle ever so slightly, trying to stay on the throttle, lifting a little bit only, I've tried out different things. Now this is a section where I am losing time compared to other cars. On the other hand, the downhill section used to be where I lost 0.2 of a second, but now I'm actually gaining 0.3 of a second as I go through here compared to how I was previously driving. So that was one of the major improvements. There's still more to go, and I need to figure out how that works. Maybe next season on this particular racetrack, I'll actually be better. As I try to push through here, making my way down the straight, trying to keep up with the cars in front, gaining a little bit of position eventually is the hope here, and I push the pedal to the metal and off we go. Turn 1 presents a bit of a challenge, as I always try to brake late and try to brake hard. When I do overshoot, in this case I did not, but when I do overshoot, it's usually because I press the brakes too hard, lose traction, and then the car is sliding. Sliding is not good for braking. It is actually worse when the wheels lock up, so I needed to fine-tune my braking here. This one turned out fine, and I managed to get closer to the cars ahead of us. This was my first race of the season in this particular racetrack, and I was flabbergasted how I was 2 seconds faster than last season, just a couple of weeks ago. It did not feel like I made improvements in the other races that would be worth 2 seconds on this racetrack, but apparently it was. So now I'm going to position myself on the outside here, trying to go back to the inside as the other car shuts down where we were, and of course, I do overshoot a little bit, but the car behind me managed to brake a little bit, but they do this switchback, and then they have gained the position back. This, of course, was brilliant driving from them, as far as I was concerned, and I thought to myself, well, fair enough, maybe this is not a time for me to overtake over here, and I need to set my overtakes up properly, and maybe the safest spot for me to overtake is going to be only on the straight. But I do attempt to overtake on the uphill turn as well as on the final straight. Those seem to be my two favorite spots to overtake on this particular racetrack, as far as I can tell, on the Mazda here. The other thing I really enjoyed doing is reviewing my racing from the far chase line or the blimp line, because then you can actually see where the track is colored darker. We overtake one of the cars here that had a poor exit out of the last turn there, and we almost go off track and go off-roading here as I try to drift in the shadow here. Now, is this too much of an aggressive move? This is where we can see what I was talking about earlier, where I overshoot because I'm pressing the brakes too hard and the car just keeps sliding, and all my attempts to overtake are now for nothing. Now I have to go back forward here and try to catch up to these cars again, which I know I can do, and at this point I realize that I need to relax a little bit. I'm overly driving in a too aggressive manner here, and that reminded me of several of the other YouTubers who said you just have to chill occasionally and just flow rather than push it and drive very edgy. And that's what I tried to do. I tried to relax a little bit, have smoother inputs in the steering, the throttle, the brakes, braking a little bit earlier, going off the brakes earlier, carrying more speed into the entry of corners, which of course, as you all know, is important for the Mazda. Here, excellent braking. Because I was braking smoother and more controlled, I actually slowed the car down far quicker than I had anticipated, making a quicker and earlier entry into the corner. So I need to adjust to that. This is one of those things where consistency really matters, and I'm not quite as consistent as I would like to be, and there's a couple of seconds, or tenths of seconds at least, to be gained from that as well. Being consistent here. Same thing when this turn, braked a little bit too well, and that made me end up too early in the corner where I was already slowed down enough for me to turn. And again, those sort of relaxing moments and drives are where I should be probably more often, rather than pushing the car too aggressively. But I have, in my race, again, turned on the delta bar up at the top, so I know how fast I'm going compared to previous races. And instead of trying to go for new top laps, I'm just now trying to go consistently, about a second or so slower than my fastest lap. This time I brake very well into this turn one, and I actually managed to slow the car down at the entry of the corner's apex and make it turn. This is about 2/10 slower than my fastest way through this particular racetrack, and I keep pushing. This turn here, I eventually figured out how to do a little bit better. The turn going out here into these little, what's called a chicane maybe, is also not very well done and never very well executed, but I do try to position the car in a straight line going down to this back straight there so that I can make up a little bit of space here into the cars in front of me. Going to the uphill part is one of my favorite spots, and I do try to experiment with this a little bit in terms of where to brake, how hard to brake, as I make my way closer to the cars in front of us. Now that we've caught up to the car in front, I am trying to again think of where I should be overtaking this car. Is the final straight the best optimal way? Or will I have to wait for a mistake? Again, braking late, but this time I was braking well and controlled, and I managed to come right to the apex where I wanted the car to be positioned to. However, I do speed up too slowly and the car gets away from me a little bit, but that's about a good distance because that means I can carry full speed, as far as I can tell, through this corner and set myself up for an overtake on that final straight here. On the downhill section, braking, my cue usually is that I want to get off the brakes once the speedometer hits about 80 miles. That's usually, if I'm pointing the right direction, or the familiar direction, that's a good speed. This time, again, I'm trying to brake correctly at the right spot, and I managed to do it. No overshooting, slow braking, smooth braking, not full applications, just about 70%, 60% braking here. That was enough to slow the car down and get it to turn, and we're caning on the car in front again, and the car that we've just overtaken is falling behind. So what can we do about the car in front of us? We know for sure that I can drive faster than the car in front just based on the qualifying times. Of course, qualifying times might not represent their actual average times or their best times to drive around this particular track, but it's a guiding post, and that gives me hope. On the other hand, we can also wait for them to disconnect because they are blinking a bit, but that's not really very sportsmanlike, and we can also hope for a mistake on their part and then not make a mistake ourselves, and that of course would be the easiest way for us to overtake them. But That's not going to happen, so we have to keep fighting through here. We have to make sure that we stay on track. And you see where the track is darker in color? Those are where you're supposed to be, and I believe this applies to the Mazda, not some other race car as well, because I did try to go through here with a different car at some point for a test drive, and the darkened lines did not match, or at least I could not make the car fit on these darkened lines through here. But maybe that was just me. Either way, I do love that for that reason to review on the blimp view or the overhead view, one of those cameras, where my car is positioned in relation to these darkened parts of the track, where it probably should have been positioned to make use of the proper racing light. Again, the car in front of us has pulled away a little bit, but that's fine. We're on the back straight here, the main straight, and we can brake late. We can get the car to turn correctly. Now that there's no car on our sides, I'm actually braking in a much more relaxed way. I'm not pushing the brakes too hard, I'm not pushing it too much, and we're slowly but surely trying to make up space and room to the car in front of us. We take the curb on this particular corner, position our car here, downshift to first gear, trying to take the corner, quickly going to the left side to gain a straighter entry into these corners, staying on the outside. We overcorrect on the entry for this one, but again, trying to keep our position fairly straight and going through these turns. The fuel indicator light has turned on, which I think is the bottom left light on the dashboard there, so that might indicate fuel. Not too sure. If anybody knows, please let me know in the comment. It's always good to learn what these lights mean. I was driving a Porsche GT4 the other day, actually earlier on that particular day when I recorded this, and I figured out that losing traction on the front or rear makes different lights light up differently. That was very cool to see. Overall, I'm just getting more comfortable with this track, braking later, trying different entry points, trying different positions of the car on the racetrack, trying different exits and positions and points on the track where I apply the accelerator again, trying to go through here fairly quickly as well, trying to use the left side of the track, the right side, trying to cut as much of the paint as I dare on the right side here to get a shorter line back to the finish. But, you know, it is what it is. I've lost the P1 from the beginning of the race. It was my race to lose. I started on P1, I qualified on P1. It was my race to lose. Psychologically, this was very interesting because there was a lot of pressure. And even though I was able to keep up or slowly regain or gain on the cars in front of me that had overtaken me after my little spins and excursions into the fields, I was not fast enough to overtake them again. So there is, again, room for improvement, which is always fascinating, amazing. Throughout the progression of this particular week, I felt pretty good, and my I rating did increase quite significantly as I was able to consistently place in the points. And that of course meant each race the competition got tougher and tougher. The strength of field became higher and higher, which meant I had to fight harder and harder. If I had driven the last race of this particular week at the same strength of field that my first race of that week would have been, my goodness, I would have had a fantastic time. Well, I would have had a time where I probably would have won, but iRacing keeps it interesting by matching it with people of a similar skill rating, so that you constantly have to fight, you constantly have places to improve, you constantly have drivers in front of you that you can learn something from. That's what I find very interesting, how they're able to do this, and that keeps it enjoyable. And it's good to see the same people once in a while pop up on the same server that you're driving in the same split, and that makes it much more interesting, kind of get to know how they're driving, and that seems interesting to me as well. Let me know in the comments how you manage, taking way too much over the paint here, but let me know in the comments how you manage to stay calm and collected during a race without falling into the trap of overdriving or being too aggressive as you see cars ahead of you. Now, we've come to the end of the race here, and that's the end of it. We've recovered to P5. Thank you very much for watching. See you next time. Bye bye.